Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. The National Democratic Alliance, which was led by Bharatiya Janata Party, was able to grab 293 seats in the recently held Lok Sabha elections in India. And the leading political party, Bharatiya Janata Party, which was leading this particular alliance of NDA, was able to grab 240 seats, considerably lower as compared to what they got back in the general elections of 2019 and 2014, both, and also in a drastic contrast to their claims that ab ki baar 400 par. And Bharatiya Janata Party had to rely on the allies to get that simple majority even of 272 seats to form the government. Later on, after successful negotiations, the allies formed the government, and Narendra Modi took office as the Prime Minister of India for a consecutive third term. 71 members of the Council of Ministers have taken oath. 61 of the portfolios are with Bharatiya Janata Party, and rest of these 71 are with the allies. Now, this is the highest number of council of members as compared to both in 2019 as well as 2014. Now, when we consider as to the representation of Muslims in this Council of Ministers, when we talk about their overall population, they happen to be around 20 crores, which constitute 14.2% of the population in India, but not even a single Muslim member in this Council of Ministers that is representing this community. And also, not only this, not a single of the 293 seats the National Democratic Alliance got, not even there is a single Muslim, a Sikh or a Christian in that particular count. By looking at these stats, there is naturally a question that comes to mind. Is it simply a coincidence, or is there a deliberate attempt in order to exclude Muslims from all these decision-making bodies? Not only this, when we talk about the character of this particular Council of Ministers, majority of them have got cases registered against them. Either they are criminal or corrupt. We'll also be talking about what does that basically depict about the India's decision-making executive body. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Jauhar Saleem. He is former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan and currently serving as the President at the Institute of Regional Studies in Islamabad. Mr. Saleem, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time, on Skype, we are honored to have been joined by Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali Janjua. He's Senior Analyst. Brigadier Janjua, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Mr. Saleem, now not even a single Muslim representative as far as this Council of Ministers is concerned. This time much bigger as compared to back in 2019 and 14 both. Firstly, why such a bigger Council of Ministers this time around as compared to the previous one? Firstly, on that, and why not Muslims this time around representing in it?
Well, firstly, this is a coalition government, so probably they had to take a few more ministers to accommodate their coalition partners as well, because, as you've already mentioned, quite unexpectedly, BJP couldn't even get a simple majority this time. Last time they got 303 seats, and this time just 240 seats. So that explains the bigger Council of Ministers partially. The other point you made about no Muslim representation in the cabinet, and this is very characteristic of Modi. In previous instances as well, firstly, he did not award any BJP ticket to Muslims in India, which is shocking. Firstly, Muslims constitute almost 15% of the population, going by the sort of the estimates, because sometimes the census probably underrepresent them a bit. Secondly, there are about 50 constituencies, more than 50 constituencies in House of 543, where Muslims are more than 1/3. There were 12 constituencies where they are actually in majority, out of those two, 543. Still, no party ticket was awarded to any Muslim, firstly. Then in the previous instances as well, what we saw in the last Modi government, after the 2019 elections, they did not have any elected member of the Lok Sabha who's Muslim. But what he did was he picked one, Mr. Abbas Naqvi from the Rajya Sabha, and made him the Minister for Minorities. And that has been a tradition as well. They normally do that, like in the previous governments as well, there was a lady Muslim minorities minister.
So Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, he resigned later on.
Yeah, he resigned because he could not be re-elected in Rajya Sabha, so he had to resign. So then Muslims after 22, in 22, he could not get re-elected, so he had to resign. And since then, there was no Muslim representation in the cabinet. It's like, imagine with 14 to 15% of the population and not a single member. Now this time around, again, no party ticket was awarded in any of the constituencies, despite the figures that I've given in terms of how many constituencies there are in majority and where there are more than 33%. And as a result, no Muslim member elected, not even other minorities, like you said yourself. But for cosmetic reasons, what they've done is they've already picked some minorities, some other Christians and other minority members, and included them in the cabinet. There is a possibility though, because recently when some of the coalition partners, when they were interviewed, they said, wait and see, because TDP, one of the parties which is the coalition partner, they have Muslim representation, and it may be possible that subsequently they might add. But the first signal clearly suggests the anti-Muslim bias, which was again very evident during the campaign as well. We noticed that because this campaign lasted 7 rounds, which lasted several weeks. And during that, at the inception, we did not really see a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric. But as it became more clear that the votes are not, at least the voters, the BJP voters were not coming out in large numbers as expected, then the whole narrative started changing. And again, the anti-Muslim, the anti-Pakistan narrative, it was brought to the fore.
The point is well taken. It makes me curious to understand, whenever we talk about the initial phases of the campaign, when this Lok Sabha election commenced, there was no mention of anti-Muslim rhetoric or any anti-Pakistani rhetoric as far as the manifesto is also concerned. Majority of the analysts are of this similar opinion. So, do we understand that sanity prevailed at that particular time within the ranks of BJP, that they didn't actually initiate their campaign with the anti-Muslim or anti-Pakistan narrative at that time?
I think it was more than that. It was because at that point, Modi felt that he was invincible. There was actually the first election, there was this personality cult was so huge that the whole plank was Modi ki guarantee, because Modi has done this, Modi has done that, the type of things that, for instance, construction of Ram Mandir on the site of the raised Babri Mosque, then what they did with in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the abolition of Article 370 and 35A. These are all the election planks. Then many others as well. And again, he boasted that he brought India from being number 9th economy in the world to number 5. He brought 500 million, 400 million Indians out of poverty. The infrastructure, Indian infrastructure of roads and communications, and it was
so it was more of overconfidence that actually prevailed rather than the sanity, that the BJP didn't actually start its campaign with anti-Muslim and anti-Pakistan.
Definitely. At that point, they were overconfident.
I'll come back to it. Let me proceed towards Brigadier Rashid Janjua. Brigadier Janjua, is it simply a coincidence when we talk about this new, bigger than 2019 and 2014 council members sworn in, not even a single Muslim representative in this particular Council of Ministers, despite having around 15% population in India?
Yes, it's not a coincidence. It is a well-crafted strategy. And I'm not sure whether last cabinet was bigger than this. That's 2019. I believe there were 76 members last cabinet. Now they have 72, including Modi. And it might expand because the limit is 81, which is the 15% of 543 seats that they have. Why there is no Muslim despite 2 Sikhs, 2 Buddhists, and 1 Christian is in sync with the Modi worldview, which is based on communalism. He tried to stoke the same fears of Muslim, domination and Congress's giving of reservations at the cost of other backward castes. So those narratives and those messages did not resonate very well with the electorate, who had seen through this harangue and this rhetoric for far too long, because India, outside its veneer of corporate wealth, economic indices of growth, was groaning under the worst possible inequality. According to World Inequality Lab, the percentage of top 10% had appropriated more than 65% of the national wealth. And the number of billionaires, which was 125 in 2014 when Modi came, had shot up to 145 under his watch. And there was a subterranean discomfiture of rural populace, farmers, and it showed in the results as well. 30 seats were won from the rural areas by NDA, whereas 62 were won by INDA, if you consider certain states, especially those states where this agriculture was the main neglected sector and at the cost of corporate magnates. Muslims were, as usual, at the rough end of the stick, and the rhetoric was there right from the start, anti-Muslim rhetoric, by the way. And because he thought that he has pulled the Ram Mandir caper, he would be comfortable. It actually boomeranged on them. And we saw Rajnath Singh uttering vitriolic statements. And then there was Jai Shankar. He also spoke of Pakistan in very disparaging, aggressive terms. And allusion was made to the linkage of that minority with Muslims and annexation of Kashmir. That was also alluded to. So those simmering, elements were always there. But the main rhetoric was not communal till as far as in the middle, as very rightly pointed out by Ambassador. However, the main reason why Muslims have been marginalized is that it is the worldview of BJP and Modi, which believes in marginalization, exclusion, and whipping up the BJP and RSS Hindutva madness to a feverish pitch. They know that they are now pandering to a new generation, and Amit Shah was the anointed successor, but because of this downsizing of Modi after this election, it is difficult now. And we see that there were people like Mohan Bhagwat who had the RSS. He actually is a little younger in age to Modi, and both would be reaching the age of 75, which is normally in Sangh Parivar, the retirement age. So they are looking for the new generation, and this time around Modi thought that he will complete his innings and announce a successor and completely complete this journey of Hindu Rashtra that he had started in 2014. But his plans have ran into serious snags, as there are allies like TDP and Janata Dal United, who look very differently on issues regarding to minority rights. And even Nitish Kumar was not very happy once 370 was revoked. Later on, he came around. But those angularities and those cleavages are still open. And they are not happy because Chandrasekhar Naidu, he wanted the slot of speaker of Lok Sabha, which he hasn't got. So there are simmering discontents, and the Muslims naturally would find no space because, as we have just seen in UP, there were two Muslims who belonged to UP, and they were brutally lynched in state Chhattisgarh by the Hindu mob, and no action has been taken as yet. So it is more of the same under Modi's watch. And this reincarnation again would add to the same exclusion, marginalization, and xenophobia against the Muslims that we witnessed in his last two political
Brigadier
events.
Janjua, when we talk about that particular very interesting case of that particular Faizabad constituency in Uttar Pradesh, where there was the inauguration of the Ram temple, again, Bharatiya Janata Party lost that particular very important constituency. I want you to give your detailed analysis as to what exactly went wrong for Bharatiya Janata Party as far as that particular constituency was concerned. Also, when we talk about that rhetoric, you're of the view there was a bit of an element right at the start of the campaign, before the start of the election, the anti-Muslim and anti-Pakistan narrative. But as soon as the party realized that they are not getting enough traction or that dividend, so because of their overconfidence, perhaps they might have put that rhetoric for a moment aside, but they once again resorted to that in order to get more votes and increase their chances of that particular claim of ab ki baar 400 par. But that wasn't even the case after they once again resorted to that similar rhetoric which they had adopted back in 2019 and 2014 also. So what was the use of diverting from a softer stance earlier to a much harder one later in the campaign?
You see, the poverty level of Dalits and Muslims has nearly become the same. There was a simmering discontent amongst other backward classes and Dalits who thought that this march of BJP and Hindutva juggernaut is not leaving much for them by way of economic inclusion. So it was a economic factor, joblessness, inflation, and so much so that you'll be amazed to know that the placement ratio of the much vaunted Indian Institute of Technology was 62%, which means that around 36 to 38% graduates were not finding any job placements. The parents were worried, the inflation was running amok, the livelihoods were lost, and people were really angry that what caper is being pulled off. This billions of rupees were spent on this Ram Mandir. And then there were operational reasons at the constituency level also. There was some internal disunity amongst the BJP cadres. The internal BJP cadre in that constituency was not very happy with the kind of tickets that were awarded and the kind of incentives that had been earlier promised were not given. So that factor also worked against BJP, but mainly it was the economic push, and the people spoke because they had seen through the hollow rhetoric of BJP, Hindutva.
So that setback had to do more with that particular economic situation and the grievances among the public in that particular constituency. So do we understand from this that there wasn't any outright rejection of the anti-Muslim narrative on which the campaign was being built by Narendra Modi, or specifically talking about back in 2019 or 2014, through which it got the dividend? Yes,
it was not rejection or repudiation of the same narrative. In fact, we know that a vast majority still panders to those notions of Hindu supremism, so much so that the Pew Center has carried out a survey according to which the 85% of the Indian electorate still believes in Modi as a strong man. Why it could not be translated into electoral success at constituency level is because of so many disadvantaged communities and minorities, which also banded in a common cause against this cost of living crisis, inflation, economic inequality. But per se, it was not a rejection of the anti-Muslim worldview, which is still very much extant in India. And that sentiment is quite alive. And
Right.
Satyapal Malik is on
Janjua, at this point, I want to take the analysis of Ambassador Saleem also on this particular. Was it the rejection in that particular, specifically if we talk about that particular constituency, wasn't it a big setback as far as the BJP's aspirations were concerned? The inauguration of the Ram temple, as you've already mentioned, the thing BJP and Modi had been boasting about, and that didn't bring in the dividend in form of the victory from that constituency. Why?
Yeah, symbolically, yes, but as I think it has been rightly explained, there are multiple factors at play, and it's a bit more complex. In fact, for instance, in UP, and the Hindu heartland, UP and Rajasthan and all those states where Hindutva is the most popular ideology, there BJP relatively did the worst this time. Out of 225 seats, last time they had won 177, and this time they won about 120. They lost about 50 seats in the Hindu heartland. So that clearly suggested that that rhetoric was not as effective as before. That was there. Secondly, the minorities, including the Muslims, this time around, they saw Congress-led India coalition as a viable alternate in terms of voting possibilities. Then thirdly, the regional parties, they did very well in these elections. And in fact, they have gained at the expense of the bigger parties in general, particularly BJP. So I think, and what has been said in terms of the economic prowess or the economic performance of Modi, the much touted economic performance, there was a soft underbelly to that, and that was that this amazing economic turnaround which Modi has been sort of publicizing and projecting, it was limited to certain classes. The rich were getting richer, the companies were making a lot of money, the upper middle classes as well generally. But the middle classes, the low middle classes, the poor, and particularly the people in the rural areas, they were suffering because of that, because of these policies. Because this is, what economics is that? This is called the trickle-down economics, which is basically that you let the cake get bigger, and then some of it will trickle down to the sort of like to the less affluent classes. The trickle-down economics never works, and that has been seen in many countries before that. In India as well, the distribution of wealth, as it has been mentioned as well, the Gini coefficient, which measures the disparity of wealth in the world, it measured India as one of the 3 countries in the world with the most inequality now.
That was the point that was also talked so frequently by Congress this time around in the campaign also.
Yeah, definitely.
So did Congress capitalize on this particular point during the campaign to get much bigger number of seats this time around as compared to back in 2019?
Yeah, Congress has done much better. From 40-some seats, they got 99 seats this time, and with the alliance, of course, to 33
So was it because
seats.
of they focusing particularly on this disparity between the affluent and the marginalized classes?
They were focusing on issues which were closer to people's lives, like issues which affected people. They were sort of focusing more on those. And that is why, and I think the Muslim vote in India has really, this time around, it made a difference. Last time somehow BJP was able to bulldoze that Muslim vote. But Muslim vote traditionally, you see, if en bloc, if it goes to one particular alliance, that can make 15% of the sort of electorate. And the other minorities as well, that made a huge difference. So in some states, BJP actually did better than before. For instance, Orissa, where they basically dethroned a chief minister who had been in power for 20 years. In West Bengal, if they were projected to do well, they did not. In the south, they made some sort of advances, and but on the whole, they didn't really do well, and they were not even expected to do well there. So it's been a mixed bag, but but where they actually did the worst was the Hindi heartland, or the Hindutva heartland itself, and that has come as a shock to them. So that definitely suggests that ideology has lost some of its luster now, because I think, and it happens, because it's only for so long that you can sort of get votes just because of a political ideology, or just by hate mongering and in sort of inciting hatred and
so
and sort of
that naturally brings in a question when we talk about as you are talking about that Hindi heartland, right? So Uttar Pradesh being one of the key states there, right? It has got the maximum number of seats, 80 seats. The last time around, back in 2019, Bharatiya Janata Party was able to grab 62, quite considerably lower this time around, but we have seen quite considerable improvement in the performance of Congress. So during the inauguration of Ram Temple, there was a narrative built also, because there was a criticism on the part of Congress also at that time with the timing and the way Bharatiya Janata Party went about doing that inauguration. And then the speeches and the narrative, the Bharatiya Janata Party leaders tried to pinpoint those people who did not actually attend that inauguration. So there was a clear distinction that was being created on the part of Bharatiya Janata Party. So improvement in the performance of Congress, particularly in UP, what does that thing owe to?
Yeah, that suggests that the electorate has become sort of more mature in some ways. Now that whole, the Ram Temple was built, and sort of because the rise of BJP from literally 2 seats in the parliament to sort of to a majority, it coincided with this whole Babri Mosque controversy, and we have seen that how much they have exploited the issue. But there's a limit to everything. It's finally, I think that issue is now behind the electorate in India, because they feel that the mosque was raised and this Ram Temple has been sort of built on that side. It's now they have to sort of move on to other issues now, and that was very clear. The issues which affect the daily lives, and that is where Congress was able to benefit, because they were not talking about sort of any Ram Temple. They were not talking about anti-Muslims. They were not raising the rhetoric of anti-Pakistan sentiment. So I think they have done much better. We have to remember that you see the difference at the end of it between the India Alliance and the NDA Alliance was just 60 seats, which meant that another 30 seats, if another 30 seats would have switched, there would have been they would have won. And we have to also remember that this election was not totally free and fair. People are assuming that, but you see, there was, for instance, the Indian mainstream media has been totally compromised in many ways, and it was totally it was favoring NDA or BJP outlandishly. At the same time, the levers of power in terms of the city governments and everywhere, sort of and the fact that the RSS cadres, they have certain clout in terms of in every constituency they have those grassroots sort of rank and file, which is known for their coercive tactics. So despite all that, these are the results. Because if those sort of let's say if those extraneous or extra factors which which supported the BJP vote count in the end, I would say that if they had not been present, this election would have come very close actually.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, when we talk about that particular narrative during the campaign, we saw Congress talking about the disparity between the affluent class and the marginalized communities also. Do you think the number of seats this time around as compared to back in 2019, considerable improvement in their performance? Do you think, was it because of that particular narrative that they were talking about, that economic disparity?
Yes, of course, they focused on the real issues, and since this time around, there was no landslide, no wave, no Modi wave. Had there been a wave, then those cerebral considerations are pushed to the sidelines, like economy, like livelihoods, like development issues. Uh, those were the actual issues that were put uh, 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 in front of the electorate, and instead of pitching for communalism or Hindutva narrative, I think electorate considered their basic issues, and Congress did a better job of connecting with the masses. Especially, you see, the victory of something like somebody like Kishori Lal against Smriti Irani in Amethi. This is amazing. And then second important factor I'll put my finger on is the better job that INDI Alliance did by way of local politics and understanding the local dynamics. The Samajwadi Party, which was Congress ally, it did very well, and in fact, the Muslims were also corralled to the cause of Samajwadi and by implications INDA, and that is why BJP lost so many seats. Then there was another party, Bahujan Samaj Party, which represents the underprivileged Dalit community. Now that party did a lot of damage, and that party awarded the largest number of seats to Muslims in UP. That is 17. They gave tickets to 17 Muslim MPs. It's another story. They could not win, but you'll be you'll be amazed to know that the victory margin of uh, BJP on, I believe, 12 seats was less than the margin of the votes secured by the losing candidates of Bahujan Samaj Party, which had very narrowly missed being part of INDII alliance. Had it been part of, had it made a common cause with Samajwadi and Congress, then the situation of BJP would have been further precarious. So these were the electoral dynamics at the local level. The INDA alliance connected better with the masses, as the masses were fed up of economic injustice, and the lack of distributive justice was the main cause. And the reliance on the likes of Ambani, Adani, and their wealth, which was brought to the fore when the Indian Supreme Court allowed the electoral bond proceeds to be published, and people knew that 6,500 crores they were given to BJP alone, which makes around 80% of the total electoral bond. So that was virtually that was tantamount to winning the elections through corporate greed and buying the votes. And people saw through this. So this was the wellspring of public disaffection translated into local politics. And these smaller parties like Bahujan Samaj Party, Samajwadi Party, and interestingly, there were parties in Maharashtra like Shiv Sena, which got split in the middle and also divided the BJP votes. In certain local parties, they banded with INDI alliance and made a significant difference in first past the post system. So I think these were the local factors, local politics, and the economic factors, distributive justice, and people were generally, there was a public aversion to. People were sick and tired of the, continually, rhetorical march into a confrontational mode and playing politics, because apparently the promise of a glorious return to the mythical past did not resonate well with the masses, because it didn't solve apparently their it didn't promise to solve their day-to-day problems, and the things that were on the street, they were quite different from what was being planned in the uh, you know strategy rooms of these parties. So I think that is why, and to me, BJP could have lost had INDA alliance made a better job of uh, getting the support of parties like Bahujan Samaj Party. And same was the case in some other states also, because at the last time some allies pulled off, and which benefited BJP, especially in Karnataka, where they got a lot of seats, and they were not expecting. So it was almost a parity between Congress and BJP in Karnataka, which was not expected. The Congress was expected to win big time in Karnataka. So the local factors, economics, public tiredness with a continual implacable wave of Modi rhetoric, I think all this coalesced into a kind of pushback, which resulted in this electoral setback for BJP and Modi.
Right, Ambassador Saleem, when we talk, you already in one of your takes mentioned about that Muslims not being awarded tickets when it comes to Bharatiya Janata Party. So there's been a denial, particularly when we talk about Amit Shah. He has rejected such type of allegations. He has responded by saying the tickets are awarded to those who have got the capability to win the elections. So it's basically the criteria is based on that very performance, whether they will be able to win that election or not. So here's a statement. Which out of these two sides of the statement do you think carries more weight? Muslims not getting BJP tickets, or their effort of getting the tickets from BJP, as compared to Bharatiya Janata Party not awarding the tickets to Muslims? Which out of the two?
It's very clear. I mean, what he said is just a political statement, of course. It's very clear that that this is a policy of the party, and we haven't really just seen it in this election. We have seen it in the past elections as well. On the other hand, other parties have they have awarded many more tickets to Muslim candidates, and actually 24 Muslim candidates have won as well. So that and 21 out of those, basically the India Alliance. So that is clear. And as I mentioned before, how can BJP claim that when there are over 50 constituencies where the Muslim votes are more than 1/3 of the total vote? Anywhere, because not everybody casts their votes. So if you have 1/3, if you have that type of a block, any candidate from that community could win the election, basically. And this is what we see this happening in the UK, for instance, where there are over a dozen MPs, and the Muslim percentage of Muslim population in the UK is not as big. It's just like a few percent. But why? Because they know even 10,000 votes, Muslim votes in a constituency, could make a huge difference. And then, as I've said, over 12 constituencies where Muslims are in majority. So how can they claim? This is a ridiculous, absurd claim. And BJP does not award ticket to Muslims to prove the point that they are a party, which is against Muslims. They are a party of Hindu Rashtra. They are a majoritarian party. They are a Hindutva party. It's very clear.
Won't that naturally lead Muslims to not to go and make an effort to get the BJP ticket also?
Yeah, because when they know that you're not going to, it's very clear that if somebody knows that they are not going to get a ticket, they would not even apply for it. Who wants to be just humiliated or insulted? And but this is a long-standing BJP policy. We have to remember the roots of RSS. RSS, a militant organization, was basic plank was anti-Muslim and sort of anti-minorities, from its very inception, and it was never a party, even when it grew to become a majority party in the parliament, it never even claimed to be a party of all Indians. It has always claimed to be a Hindu party, a Hindutva ideology party, and that is the basic plank. But now we have to see that, because this election has proven that that whole ideology is now running its course gradually, in the next election, because they'll have to come up with something else now. And they also, the second point, which has been evidently demonstrated in this election was that the Muslim vote counts, that the minority vote counts. As I've mentioned, if the extraneous factors were not in play, and as like Brigadier Saab has mentioned, if India had done better, and it was not just that they did not do better, it was the coercive tactics of BJP, and and the fact that all these big corporates, they was literally funding them with the billions of dollars, and not just funding them. Behind the scenes, they were involved in helping build coalitions. We all know that there's a history of Reliance Group and other Adanis and other having very, very close relations with BJP and other political parties, and they influence the decisions as well. So if those factors had not been there, this election could have been an upset.
Mr. Jauhar Saleem, former Foreign Secretary, President at Institute of Regional Studies, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. On Sky, we were joined by Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali, Janjua, Senior Analyst. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.